And a reminder that this journey of life, this soul's evolution, is a long, sometimes a very long and windy road. And what I know in my own experience is that the longest journey we ever take, and the windiest journey we ever take, is those 18 inches between the head and the heart. Those are the longest, windiest minutes, hours, days, years of our life. Because our mind is a wonderful tool that helps us be logical and rational in life, but the heart is where our spiritual and human essence unites. It's the place we truly know God. Whatever you call it, you may call God love or wisdom or creativity or beauty or understanding or compassion or kindness. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's just the opening where we recognize and know. What we hear all the time here is that God is all there is, and we are one with God. That God is love, and since God is love, and God is all there is, and we are one with God, you figure out the rest. That's what we're here to talk about this morning, is really owning how much we're loved. We question that sometimes because, I don't know about you, but I get kind of messy sometimes. I make mistakes. I don't always feel like I'm at my best. And sometimes we forget how much we're loved. So will you just take a minute, not a minute, but a few seconds right now, and just feel how much you're loved without doing anything. It's simply because you are you and you're here. We're loved. And our journey is about, number one, owning that and recognizing that's the stuff of which we're made, and then being able to share and give that back to the world. I believe that's our journey, that long and windy road is the journey. The problem is when we get messy or make mistakes or forget who we are, or someone hurts our feelings or something bad happens, we're on that long and windy road and we can decide to build a camp at one of those windy places. We set up a tent, we get our little stove out, and we decide we're going to stay there. Because then we have a good excuse why we don't have to live our full potential. You know, we have a good excuse. The mystics of every religion, of every teaching, know that the path to God, to love, to wisdom, whatever you call it, is love. That's the path. So today I just want to take one of the beautiful mystics, a mystic of Sufism, that beautiful Rumi, the poet, the sage, the poet, the mystic Rumi. And I want to talk about him today a little bit, and a little bit more about the mystic Jesus, and share what the Sufi path is, because the Sufi path is a path of love. And Rumi wrote a beautiful, probably his most influential work is a 6-volume piece. It's one piece. It's 6 volumes. It's 25,000 verses and 50,000 lines. 6 books. I have not read it personally, but it's very influential in Sufism, and it's one of the most famous pieces of Persian literature. But what the book does, Masnavi, what it does is it teaches Sufis how to get in alignment with their true love of God, because that's the path. When we're talking about that long and windy path, it's the path of love and to love God. Rumi, who is a great poet, 13th century poet, he was born in 1207, and this year, in the 21st century in America, he's the #1 selling poet in America. But he's not just for Americans. He's a universal spirit. When he was born in 1207 in what is now Afghanistan, it was a turbulent time. But it was a time where the Muslims, the Hindus, and the Buddhists all lived in peace. It was still a turbulent time. And his life, he lived in a crazy era, but his poetry never reflects the chaos or the hard work it took him to express himself in his love for God and the teachings that he teaches. His funeral, and he died in 73, I think, lasted 40 days. There were Christians and Jews and Muslims and Greeks and Persians at his funeral. You didn't hear criticism that he was a Sufi, that he was a scholar of the Quran, because his words are universal, because they teach the path to love. He says, "Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open?" The door is wide open. And Rumi loves to tell a story about a friend who sent his friend in prison who wanted to break out of prison. I just need to tell you that. He wanted to get out of prison, but he sends him a rug, a prayer rug. Now, the man who was in prison would have preferred a key or a vice. But he accepted the gift, and he put the rug down, and he sat on the rug, and he prayed. And he prayed. And he prayed. And pretty soon, as he was praying, he noticed there was a very odd pattern on the rug. And he decided to meditate on it. And as he meditated, he realized that that odd pattern was a diagram of the lock that kept him in prison. After he recognized the lock, it was easy to escape. Well, isn't it true for each of us? We remain in the prison of our minds thinking we need a certain thing to get out, when what we need is with us always. We are always given everything we need. It's not always packaged the way we want. And as I said last week, oftentimes, I would say the majority of times, we're given everything we need, but what we need comes in work clothes. We have to do the work. That man needed to pray and meditate and focus his energy and let go of the thought. And let go of the thought that it had to be a certain way. And let go of the thought it had to be a certain way. And let go of the thought it had to be a certain way. Because that's what our mind gets stuck on, is we want it to be a certain way. And it's not the way we think. Now let me tell you, in the second book of the Masnavi, Rumi has a foreword, and it says, well, how will I know real love? And this is what Rumi answers. He said, you'll know when it happens. Real love has no calculating in it. Real love has no calculating in it. That's why it has to be a quality of God and not of human beings. God loves you is the only possible sentence. God loves you is the only possible sentence. The subject becomes the object so totally that they cannot be separated. God and you becomes so connected that they cannot possibly be separated when you recognize and know that God loves you. Now, Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, later in his life, in the Science of Mind textbook, there's a lot about the law. Ernest Holmes said, God is love and God is law. Love points the way, the law makes the way possible. They're the tools and principles. They're the impersonal, mechanical, dependable principles that allow us to create our experience. But he said towards the end of his life, he would have much rather he'd spoken more about love and less about the law, because he realized that the power of love is so transformative. We know that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And as we claim and recognize that power of love, that we are made of love, we can see the world with a whole different perspective. He said that life is a mirror, and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. So whatever we're thinking, and our thoughts, of course, are powered by our feelings, which is powered by our beliefs, but what we think is what we're going to see in our life. Rumi says, how can we possibly polish the mirror, which is our consciousness and our reflection and our connection to good? It's the light. How can we possibly polish the mirror when we get irritated by every rub? We have to really take ourselves, expand our perspective of who we are. We hold our life in our hands, right here. We hold it in our hands. We decide how we're going to live life, how we're going to show up. What are you holding right now? You see, this road becomes much windier and bumpier and more difficult when we hold resentment and guilt and blame and anger and a lack of forgiveness. And it becomes much more difficult when we hold a big butt, and not the booty kind of butt. That's actually becoming more popular, but thank God. Anyway, the big butt I'm talking about is the one where we say, I could accept the riches of the universe, but, I'd love to have a wonderful relationship, but, I would, I could, but. We need to replace that but with, I will accept the riches of the universe and know they're mine and do what I need to do. And we need to replace that by expanding our thinking. Every one of those limiting thoughts that we hold in our hand that keep us windy and twisty and small and limited, every one of those has a spiritual principle that will change it, that will turn it around. When Susan said, raise you up, there's a spiritual principle for every one of those limitations we have in our hands that can turn us around and raise us up if we're willing to do the work. It's not enough to just know it here. We have to internalize it. Now, I don't know what you're holding, but think of whatever it was, the limitation there. Because the spiritual principle could be wisdom, it could be love, it could be creativity, it could be beauty, it could be responsibility. There's so much it could be. It all boils down, of course, to love and fear. Any thought of love is healing. We can't hold love and fear together at the same time. Any thought of love is going to heal a situation, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. Just the thought of love. This is Valentine's week, and if you ask Kirk, our anniversary is on Valentine's Day, but it's not. It's 2 days later. But he only wants to do one gift. I keep telling him. Anyway. All right. But he did. He gave me probably the best gift. And this is after 40 years of marriage, so the best gift this week. Our schedules have been kind of busy, and this and that and here and there. And so I was going to the acupuncturist on Saturday, and I said, well, I'm off, and maybe we can connect for a cup of coffee afterwards. And he goes, well, how long will it be? And I said, I never know for sure. It could be an hour, it could be an hour and a half. I don't know. It depends on how wound up I am, how long it takes. And he said, okay. I said, I'll give you a call. Well, I walked out of the acupuncturist's office, and there's some steps there, and there's Kirk sitting on the step. I felt like high school. I mean, it was so cool. He was just sitting there. I said, that is the most romantic thing I can even imagine in my whole life. And it didn't require anything to buy or get, but just a thought that I mattered, that he could take the time and sit there as long as it took. Those things count. Every one of us needs to know we matter. Every one of us wants to know that. As I said, Mother Teresa said there's more hunger in the world for love than there is for bread. We need to know that. And when we can make those connections, everything can change. Now, we know that life is powerful, and we have a power in us that is amazing. Now, how many of you saw The Theory of Everything? Wasn't that wonderful? Stephen Hawking, isn't that just, what a man, what a life he had, and how he's made such a difference in the world. And I just need to know if we have any particle physicists here, because I don't want to quote anything incorrectly. I don't know very much about physics, but I'll tell you it in his book, and he mentioned it in the movie, A Brief History of Time, which is hysterical in itself, but A Brief History in Time, he mentions that we have in this world 4 forces. There are 4 powerful forces which run this universe. And there's the force, the gravitational force, the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, and the strong nuclear force. And those are the laws that really drive this universe and make it work. But you and I, no, there's even a bigger force. And that's the force of love. And that's why Ernest Holmes was saying, I wish I'd talked more about love, because that changes things. I can talk about the law all you want, but to have Kirk sitting on that step, the law's not going to change me like that. It's that makes us vibrate at that level that Susan was sharing, that lifts us up and raises us up to something different. So if we want to put this into practice, we have to decide to move what's in here. The truth we know. We can know so much. We're so smart and capable, but we want to internalize it. So the one question to ask, and it's really the question that fits it's the question that fits any question. Does that make sense? I don't think so. But anyway, it fits anything. And it's, what would love do? When you have any dilemma in your life, it's what would love do? And then you can be clean and clear, because if love is the force, it doesn't matter what the reaction is, but it's who we are and how we show up. What would love do here? If that's the question, the answer is always going to be right if we're in alignment with that good. Doesn't mean it always shows up in this outer world the way we calculate it to show up. Just because we're kind and forgiving and loving doesn't always mean we get that in return. But we're clean and clear, and we see a greater good. So I'm going to invite you right now to simply do a little meditation with me. I'm going to just invite you to just meditate. I'll start with a Rumi quote, because however long and windy your road has been, just in the last day, the last week, the last month, whatever it's been that has brought you here, I want to start with the understanding, and then we're going to close our meditation with something else. A little beautiful music would be nice, just very soft in the background. Thank you. So just take a nice deep breath. And I'm going to ask you or invite you to just invoke the feeling of love. And invoke that feeling of love by just thinking, remembering someone, something, somewhere that you love to be. Somewhere, something, someone. That just brings that vibration up in you, that expands you. It's an energy and essence that makes sense of things. And it's a reminder that we are on a journey of opening, a journey of remembering, of becoming, of expanding our consciousness. Rumi says, no matter how fast you run, your shadow more than keeps up. Sometimes it runs. Only full overhead sun diminishes your shadow, standing in the light. But remember, that shadow has been serving you. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your candle that waits for the light. Your boundaries are your quest. Surrender. Let the mind rest on the cradle of your heart. Take this moment to sweep out any of the blockages, the stones, that keep us stuck, and be open and available to the sea of love. Immerse yourself in God's love and listen. Let every cell of your being, every atom in your body be available as an ear to listen and hear the continual voice, the quiet whisper of that essence and energy we may call God, love, beauty, creativity, compassion, joy, understanding. Listen. See the pattern that may seem odd or different, but the pattern that's here to set you free, to open you to a greater experience of life. Feel how much you are loved. And allow that love that you feel to be activated in you, that you may share it out into the world. Share it with those you love and those you don't. Places that feel good and places that don't. Let that be a blanket of healing energy, power, vibration that uplifts this world, this life. And as you share that, I'd like you again to hear these words of Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, and I will meet you there. As the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Because when we rise above the right doing and wrong doing, when we rise above the separation, it is a place of oneness. And as you come back here to this room, open and available, I just want to close with what the beautiful mystic, the grand teacher, Jesus told us. When he was asked the greatest teaching, the greatest commandment in the world, he said, there is only one. Actually two, but one. He said, love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Love with all of yourself, your whole being. It's not enough just to have parts of it. It's the whole being. And love your neighbor, your brother, your sister as yourself. That is the one great commandment for life. That is the thing that changes everything. And so for you and me, if we can support that in each other, and when other people forget, simply be the reminder. Be the one who chooses to act from that place. And when we fall down, look for the good that reminds us to get back on track, to pick up that tent, put it away, and move on. Our life is in our hands. And Gretchen, if you can just take this moment, and we probably are going to want to get up and do a little moving here, but all we need right now is to know that love is real, that we are loved, and we are here to love. That's all we need right here, right now, and forever. So in case you forget this Valentine's week, I do love each and every one of you beyond measure. Thank you.